Between. She's had a long day. Good girl. Between. Good girl. Unlike the previous speaker, I've never done anything like this. So offer me some grace. Thank you for that introduction. Thank you for inviting me here to speak today. Public speaking is not something I do, but I'm very passionate about this cause, and I'm so grateful for everyone that made it possible for me to get Proxy. So I'll probably cry through the whole thing, and if you guys can just bear with me, I'll appreciate that. I was matched with Proxy last year. She's a veteran service dog with many different tasks, including mobility assistance, medical alert, deep pressure therapy, interruption of visible PTSD symptoms, positioning cues to create a barrier between me and strangers in public, constant eye contact for emotional regulation, creates a sense of safety for me, and it grounds me. She also retrieves items, she opens doors, and she does other tasks as well. Her service work mitigates the disabling effects of my many injuries, illnesses, and my ongoing symptoms from my traumatic experiences. I first acquired a brain injury from a toxic exposure while deployed to Afghanistan with 82nd Airborne. I was 20 years old, an athletic and motivated paratrooper and combat medic. I loved the Army. Nothing about my body or my life has been the same since that first brain and spinal cord injury. My brain injury triggered a rare autoimmune disease that causes repeated attacks and relapses. These attacks continue to damage my brain, spinal cord, and optic nerves, the nerves in my arms, legs, face, the nerves that control my basic life functions like breathing, swallowing, heart rate, and blood pressure. Proxy and I actually just spent our week. Every month we go to the hospital for a week, and she lays with me in the hospital bed so I can get my infusions. That's why I'm walking today. I don't have to do that alone anymore. My illness has recently been managed for the first time because of my full participation in this aggressive treatment protocol. That was something I couldn't really do before I got Proxy because of the stress of going to the doctor and dealing with all the emotional regulation of those interactions. When I first lost my ability to move my arms and then to walk, I was medically evacuated from Afghanistan for treatment. When I got there, I was assaulted and later developed PTSD from that experience. I was back in Afghanistan a month after the assault to finish the remaining 10 months of my tour. I was never able to have an emotional response after the assault itself and the aftermath it caused. I did not expect the future traumatic events that came after that over the following years, or the decade of chronic trauma that eventually led to complex PTSD. I eventually found myself struggling with progressively disabling PTSD symptoms and progressively disabling symptoms from the damage accumulating in my nervous system. I knew that my life was stopping in its tracks. I saw myself hitting a dangerous point of isolation, and I was avoiding everything. My self-esteem became so low, I began dissociating frequently. If you don't know what dissociating is, it's like you disappear into the ground while you're sitting there, you lose touch with everything around you. Medications weren't controlling my symptoms. I still was convinced that my trauma didn't warrant a veteran service dog or a targeted PTSD treatment program because my trauma wasn't rooted in a heroic source while serving in combat. It felt rooted in shame and guilt. My PTSD symptoms were further exacerbated after 2 traumatic brain injuries that occurred after I left the service and long-term family trauma exposures. I'm here today because another veteran shared her story that I watched on YouTube, and that was the catalyst for me to reach out to this organization. Hearing her story made me feel validated. Seeing how her life had improved because of her service dog gave me hope for my own life. I overcame the inner voice that was telling me I did not deserve treatment or a service dog, and realized that many of us with PTSD are suffering from the same or similar symptoms, regardless of the details surrounding our specific traumas. I'm here because Proxy has been a more effective treatment and form of assistance than any of the counseling I had received or medications I had taken in the past decade and a half. She has allowed me to get off of multiple medications and to only need them when I'm severely triggered. The combination of medications and Proxy service work is what recently kept me out of inpatient care after being faced with a severe trigger. I faced that trigger just to get the medical care that I needed. I was able to live through each day 1 second at a time until my symptoms were managed again, and was able to go off of medication once I recovered from that episode. On Veterans Day this year, I entered an outpatient treatment program for PTSD. I had never received targeted therapy before and have never talked about certain traumatic events or experienced normal emotions about them. Without Proxy, I would have not gone to that appointment. I wanted to turn around and go home during every second of the drive to the clinic. Proxy means I can show up for the treatment I need and continue moving forward with healing. Much like I wanted to escape and hide from that first appointment, I struggled to prepare for and show up to this event today. Last night I went through many hours of symptoms and Proxy helped me get through it. For the first time, I broke through my dissociation reaction and recovered in time to make a planned trip happen instead of skipping it. The airport was incredibly stressful and I would not have done it without her. I would not have traveled without her help. Proxy has completely redefined my quality of life with her service. She has opened up a world of possibility and hope for me and my daughter. I'm a single mom. Proxy means a path to healing and rebuilding, a path to living instead of surviving. Together we are creating a semblance of safety, independence, freedom, family, and defining the concept of home for the first time since I went into the military. Proxy is a bridge from our old world of chronic stress to our new world of a genuine range of emotions and plenty of laughter in our home. I struggled deeply with irritability and agitation. I was easily overstimulated. I often drifted into a world of bad experiences in my mind while awake and asleep. Proxy is a mirror, reflecting my inner darkness before I know that I am falling back into its shadow. She tells me it's there before I can see it sometimes. When I first brought her home, I remember the first time she nudged me. She saw me falling apart before I even knew I was doing it. I just broke down on the floor crying and realized I wasn't alone with this anymore, and that I had a chance to do something about it before my symptoms became uncontrolled. Sometimes she breaks through my dissociation by making unrelenting eye contact. Eventually, I notice that she's staring at me, and I look at her back. Sometimes that doesn't work, and she ends up just licking my face until I notice her. It just alerts me that I'm in a dissociated state and allows me to do something about it. She guides me back to the present moment over and over again with her behaviors and her dedication to her work. She intervenes and allows me to take positive actions to mitigate my symptoms before it's too late to control them. If there is nothing I can do to prevent being triggered or experiencing an intense and prolonged emotional reaction, then Proxy is there to help me through it. I've never had that before. When I wake up startled and panicked or am stuck in and out of a nightmare, Proxy is with me, beckoning me back to reality. She is a grounding force when I shut down and lose touch, or when my emotions and memories become so amplified, I can't be still at all. She's the difference between pacing all night and checking the doors, and me staying in bed with her, doing deep pressure therapy until I can sleep again. I almost never slept before I got Proxy. Since I got her, I've been sleeping a near regular amount. I am almost never still inside, but Proxy has helped me to find a calmer and more peaceful place. She is the force that allows me to be as still as I am able to be as I work through this long healing process. She doesn't ask me to mask myself for her comfort. She sees me and accepts me. My health conditions are not a burden to her. I am not a burden to her. This dynamic of mutual caretaking, love, service, and selflessness helps me to see myself in a more positive light again. Proxy helps me to value myself in a new way after feeling lost to prolonged trauma and illness. Before matching with her, I had learned to cope with the massive uncertainty of my daily life and my future by shrinking myself in my world as much as possible and escaping everything I possibly could. Now I am coping differently. She offers me the safety and security to do things despite the large fluctuations in my mobility, sensation, and strength. Sometimes I can't feel my legs. Sometimes it comes on suddenly and I'm in public and I just can't walk. She makes me feel more capable by helping me when the simplest daily tasks are so painful and exhausting. She motivates me to keep going with her love and enthusiasm for her work. She has allowed me to progress through many stages of physical rehabilitation. We've turned my rehab into play. I didn't want to do it before, it was too painful. Now I just play with her and I do my exercises. She allows me to feel safe walking in public again. We both need to be walked daily, and it has become a great source of joy and stress management for me. I have regained a lot of strength and balance because I now feel safe going on walks outside. She makes me feel confident that I can overcome the sweating and tears involved in an airport experience to speak for a cause that I am so passionate about. She's the reason I'm speaking to you today at all. When we are out in public, Proxy creates a bubble within which I can ground myself, focus, and function. The intensity of my surroundings is dulled to a more tolerable level. I am able to cope through periods of sensory overload and complete a task like shopping without abruptly leaving to cope instead. The effects of my brain and vision injuries make crowds, stores, and other loud and visually stimulating environments feel really overwhelming. Proxy allows me to enter these environments and manage my symptoms. Proxy also helps me initiate daily tasks because I focus on getting her ready and direct my attention on doing our preparation steps together. This has made a life-changing difference in how often I leave my house. The stress of being outside of my home has decreased, and being in public is becoming a routine part of life now. I've only had her for a year. Being in public has led to building social connections for my daughter and for me. This is a huge difference for us. Before Proxy, each day was its own exercise in survival. That survival was accomplished by constantly suppressing my true reactions and deep discomforts and adopting a mask instead. That mask had to grow, and the toll it took on me was heavy. Hiding myself for the sake of others was so exhausting. The more exhausted I became, the more I wanted to be alone. I could hardly sleep before I had her to lay on me and help me stay calm, and the sleep deprivation exacerbated my PTSD symptoms and all of my other illnesses. Just before getting Proxy, I had reached a point where I stopped doing anything unless it was required within my role as a mother. I ordered anything I possibly could online. I avoided talking to people in general, and I stopped talking to people I already knew and loved because interacting was so exhausting and overwhelming. I dreaded my many uncomfortable doctor's appointments. I hated being touched all the time by strangers. I often considered avoiding my medical care. I avoided walking outside, being in public. I didn't want to be alone because of my trauma triggers and the intense feeling of being unsafe. I stopped going out alone because I feared being assaulted again while looking so obviously vulnerable in public when my mobility was clearly limited. Before Proxy, I used a walker a lot. Now I can use a mobility harness with her, and I don't feel like such a target. While I was waiting to be matched with Proxy, I became extremely ill from an attack on my brain and spinal cord, and I could have lost my life. I did not know if I would walk again or live independently again. When I was in the hospital, I knew that a lot of physical therapy and rehabilitation was ahead. My biggest fear was that the organization would tell me I no longer qualified for a service dog, that I was too sick. I thought I would lose the opportunity for this life-changing partnership. Instead, TLC trained Proxy to do a custom medical alert task. She has a service dog phone. When I suddenly become weak or experience being temporarily paralyzed, she can go and call an ambulance for me or my family by nudging the button on the wall, which is a phone. That's the only reason I can continue living alone with my daughter. The fact that this organization did not refuse me when I got too sick, and instead they adapted her training and supported me. They saw my conditions and disabilities as something they could accommodate, not something too challenging to help with. That really shocked me. I think about it all the time. My PTSD symptoms made my medical conditions, all the required monitoring, the medical procedures, the treatment interventions, and the constant interpersonal interactions very difficult to cope with. I used to cope by disappearing inside myself, dissociating when I was triggered or overwhelmed, losing my ability to feel normal emotions for over a decade, losing my desire to be around others unless it was my daughter, losing my desire to care for myself in the most basic ways, and just disconnecting from the world around me. Each day was a challenge to survive my internal environment and the external environment and the widespread impacts of my grave illnesses. I got to a point where I could no longer function when my daughter did not need me or when she was not home with me. I don't have her all the time, and when she was visiting her dad, I would catch myself staring at a wall for days. I wouldn't care for myself. I wouldn't do anything until I knew she was coming home. That's when I got really worried and applied for service dog. I started imagining what might happen when my daughter got older and moved out, if I would end up in a mental hospital. I just couldn't imagine the future. I dreaded interactions because of the exhausting toll it took to hide the irritability and frustration I felt over every simple thing. My self-esteem was so low, my self-criticism was so high, I was just ashamed of myself and felt a constant sense of failure. I didn't know how I was going to get better. My life has changed so much since Proxy has become my partner. She now feels like another part of me and like I'm a part of her. It feels impossible to convey her impact through words. Our bond and the way we function together feels like a breath of fresh air after years of holding my breath terrified. After a decade and a half of feeling progressively frozen in time, surrounded by living nightmares and repeated losses, I finally see the ice melting to reveal new growth. I was recently re-enrolled in the UC Davis Medical School program, and Proxy and I will return as a team in January to finish my medical doctorate degree. It's amazing to see a future again, to see a way that I'm going to support my daughter, to see how I can adapt and cope with my PTSD and go back to work. I want to help other people with chronic disabilities like I have, specifically children, which I think Proxy would love. Proxy means safety and security to me. She is the reason I can safely live in my home because she can call the ambulance for me if I cannot. She can save my life, the use of my limbs and my eyesight by making that one call. She can be sure I am not suddenly left alone and unable to move without a way to get help for myself, whether I'm in public or at home. She can assist me at work and school so that I can go back to the life I worked so hard for and feared was lost. Proxy means freedom to me. Freedom to laugh, to cry after years of being unable to cry, to feel the rewarding emotions of playing with my daughter. That was probably the biggest feeling that overwhelmed me after I got her. Just feeling happy playing with my child. Feeling joy and excitement, becoming close to people again. Proxy gives me freedom to step back into the world and show up as I am. I don't feel ashamed of myself anymore. Her help allowed me to stop avoiding social interactions and loud noises, strangers and crowds. She helps me to follow through with the overwhelming number of treatments and doctor's appointments I require to manage my injuries and diseases. She helps me to regulate my emotions so that I can answer my phone, work through confrontation and stress, manage agitation and discomfort, all without hiding from its source, and to get more sleep despite the many obstacles I face with falling and staying asleep. Proxy means there is someone there to help me know what is real and that I am safe when the nightmares wake me up in a panic. Proxy means overcoming the limitations that had greatly reduced my quality of life before I had her. She means joy, love, and hope, no matter what the uncontrollable circumstances may be. Proxy means the ability to overcome what I could not without her. The freedom to participate in life and be fully present as a mother means the world to me. Freedom to walk outside of my home with confidence that I will be assisted when needed and safe while navigating public spaces. She means freedom from the fear that used to hold me back from doing anything at all. Proxy has given me the freedom to live again, freedom to be myself, to go for walks that maintain my sanity and bring me daily peace and joy, to tolerate a large crowd for the sake of someone I love or a cause I care deeply about. She offers unconditional acceptance and unwavering guidance as I heal what I can and learn to cope with the rest instead of being debilitated by it. Proxy means freedom from the world that exists inside the darkest parts of me. She has been the way out of solitude and emptiness. She is the way back to myself and to others, the way back to experiencing emotions, sleeping, and living a full life. Thank you all for your time. Proxy, release. Let's go. Thanks.